Hello, and welcome to this 9th video in our series about the North Node in the signs. We are the astrologers of Pandora Astrology. I'm Jamie Kale Miller. I'm in Berkeley, California.
I'm Julia Mijas in San Francisco, California.
Today, we're going to tell you what it's like when you have the North Node in adventuresome Sagittarius and in your natal chart, that is, which means, of course, that you will also have the South Node in cerebral Gemini. So what are the nodes in general? The nodes cut a destiny path directly through your chart from past to future. The South Node speaks to your karmic past, the kinds of past lives that you're drawing on in this one. And the North Node speaks to your evolutionary future. And so the South Node has a tendency to feel really familiar and easy and comfortable, like, oh yeah, why wouldn't I want to do my South Node thing? I know how to do that stuff. Whereas the North Node feels scary and unfamiliar, like risky new territory, but it's also exhilarating when you get it right. So in our lifetime, we are supposed to move away from the things of the South Node and not indulge that comfort zone while moving forward into our North Node and exploring that and really living into that. It has the side effect of making you feel like you're really on the path, walking in the right direction, oriented towards your future. Julia, would you say some things about what it means when a person has the North Node in Sagittarius in their natal chart?
Absolutely. So yeah, let's play around with the symbolism of this a little bit. Gemini is the sign of Mercury, the planet of communication and mentation. So if we were to construct a little karmic narrative out of the South Node in Gemini, it might mean that you have karma or past lives as a thinking sort of person, maybe living in your own head a lot. That could mean that maybe you were a scholar or a scribe or a messenger of some kind. And I like to imagine this past life experience as kind of being like the town crier, you know, that hear ye guy who communicated between the king and the people. Or, you know, another version of this could be a monk who's learning to form letters so that you could duplicate the written word, such as the Bible, and maybe write and scribe in illuminated manuscripts. So you likely spent these existences living in a single environment and never traveled beyond your hometown. So that could mean that your introversion was complete, but that it's really supposed to change in this lifetime. So if we start looking across the chart to where the North Node is in, and it's in the opposition of Gemini will always be Sagittarius. And Sagittarius is the sign ruled by Jupiter. And Jupiter also has an intellectual component to it as well, but it is very different than Gemini. It more represents our higher mind, our more philosophical mind. So with the North Node in Sagittarius, you're supposed to kind of get out into the world and have adventures. You know, Sagittarius is a very experience-oriented sign. It's also the sign of travel. So that means you might be you're supposed to sort of rub elbows with other people. For example, like a gypsy tarot card reader used to call it, those long journeys over water, and maybe meet people and have experiences which are very different from yourself. And you're supposed to encounter differences and also learn some tolerance around them. Maybe learn to construct a broader philosophy and worldview about them. You're sort of supposed to expand your mind and grow beyond that little small sphere from where you came, even though this might feel a little unfamiliar, a little scary, because that South Node, we're so used to it, we do it so well that, you know, growing into our North Node can sometimes be a bit of a challenge. So, we can talk about some examples now and look at some real life examples of how this plays out. And I know the first one we want to talk about is Ernest Hemingway, the great American novelist. He was also a short story writer and journalist. And as you can see, his Mercury, so that's the planet of communication and mentation, the ruler of his South Node, actually trines his North Node while also sextiling that South Node. So Mercury really helps him to walk this path from the karmic past to the destined future. And Mercury is the writer in us. So in true Mercury fashion, Ernest Hemingway began his writing career as a journalist for the Kansas City Star, where he used the Star's guide, its style guide, as a foundation for his early writing. So one quotation is, use short sentences, use short first paragraphs, use vigorous English, be positive, not negative. That really sort of embodies the style that he picked up from his experience in journalism with the Kansas Star. And he became known for his ability to synthesize complex data and information into sentences that were direct, pithy, fresh, and natural. So also Sagittarian, because both of these nodes are playing out in his lifetime. So also having to do with Sagittarius was Hemingway's frequent choice of subject matter. So his stories expanded the American experience to other countries and faraway lands, travel, expansion, worldliness, as well as adventure. And he often wrote about Americans abroad who are bilingual and bicultural. America is a very isolated country. So this was quite an expansive perspective he was giving to American literature. And Hemingway said that his goal was to give not just a representation of experience, but something that would feel like direct experience from the writing itself, that would sort of act as part of the reader's own memory. So Hemingway was considered a part of the, quote, lost generation of writers in the 1920s, the generation that were in early adulthood during the First World War. So Neptune conjoins his South Node, and that demonstrates the sort of disoriented, wandering, directionless spirit of his generation. He also moved away from a Neptunian lack of clarity in that his writing style was very concise, very precise, hard and lean in lots of ways too. So he's a great example of what we were just talking about. I know Jamie has another example for us we can look at.
I do, but I want to throw in there that the name Lost Generation was coined by, I'm not going to think of her name, and she's so famous. I'm not going to think of it. But when I looked up the years that the Lost Generation were born, it was like they have Neptune and Gemini. So it was, yeah. I mean, talk about, wandering aimlessly. And here we have the chart of Friedrich Nietzsche, the philosopher. True to his Gemini South Node, located here in the 7th house, Nietzsche began his career as a philologist, a student of words themselves. Shifting to a career as a philosopher shows his movement towards the seeking of meaning and ethical exploration with his North Node in Sagittarius. His principle of perspectivism points to his moon conjunct North Node right here in the 1st house, that perception of and knowledge of anything is inherently bound to individual interpretation, and that subsequently morality is subjective, and his conclusion was that it should be. Nietzsche's notion of the Übermensch as an example of humanity's highest goal has a Sagittarian and 1st house flavor in its self-affirming philosophical principles, as well as the less savory Sagittarian traits like pomposity, grandiosity, dogmatism. Übermensch is usually translated into English as Superman, but it usually means overman. That's like the literal meaning translated from German. The Übermensch renounces society and the majority and instead goes one's own way, very 1st house, right? Digging deep into his individual experience for truth towards Sagittarius's tendency to be a know-it-all, a truth seeker, and away from the South Node and the 7th house tendency to care too much about what others think of you. So clearly he walked his path. He famously says that God is dead to describe post-enlightenment thought. However, he is not nihilistic. He seeks a reevaluation of meaninglessness and wants people to overcome nihilism. His philosophy affirms life, very fiery in its nature, right? Fire is very robust, including his suffering, so that he would gladly live it again and again in its entirety. Interesting example, South Node in Sagittarius. So that's all for today. If you have the South Node in Sagittarius, this video was a treasure trove designed to help you find your evolutionary path and get on it. You'll find more great North Node videos like this one on our YouTube channel, Pandora Astrology, gathered together in a single playlist. Thanks for watching this video to the end, and if you enjoyed it, please be sure to like it, share it, and subscribe to our channel. You can find us at pandoraastrology.com, and we'll see you around the cosmos. Bye.
Bye-bye.